My siblings stole my savings to renovate their house. You'll be fine, they said, showing off their new kitchen. I just smiled. Months later, when the bank took everything, they showed up at my door with suitcases, pleading. I never thought I'd end up here, sitting in my quiet house, sipping coffee, while my siblings lost everything. But to be honest, I'm not even surprised. I, 41M, and the youngest of three. My older brother Eric, 46M, and my sister Natalie, 43F, have always been close. Thick as thieves, as my mom used to say. But if you ask me, that's because they enable each other's worst tendencies, mainly their complete and utter inability to handle money. I was always different. While they racked up debt, I saved. While they jumped from one bad financial decision to the next, I worked, invested, and built a safety net for myself. Our parents, bless them, never saw the difference. They preached family comes first, but what they really meant was Eric and Natalie come first. And you, Daniel, will always be fine. It started when we were kids. Eric would steal my stuff, comic books, my Walkman, even money from my piggy bank, and my parents would just shrug. He's your big brother, let it go. Natalie was the same, though sneakier about it. She'd borrow my clothes and ruin them, take my things without asking, always with a bright, "Oh, you don't mind, do you?" And if I did, well, I was being selfish. As we got older, their entitlement grew. Eric got married young to his high school girlfriend, Diane. They had 2 kids right away and spent money like it was infinite. Fancy cars, new furniture, vacations, none of it within their means. When reality hit, they came knocking on our parents' door for help. And when that wasn't enough, they knocked on mine. Natalie wasn't much different. She jumped between careers, always finding a new passion that she swore would work out this time. One year, she was a yoga instructor. The next, she was selling homemade candles. Then she had a brilliant idea to open an online boutique. She made grand speeches about being an entrepreneur, but had no idea how to run a business. When it flopped, she was in debt and, of course, turned to family to bail her out. And every single time, I was expected to help. "Come on, Dan," my mom would say, exasperated like I was the problem. "You're doing well. Can't you spare a little?" I used to cave. I'd give them small loans, never large because I knew I'd never see it again, but enough to keep them afloat. But no matter how much I helped, it was never enough. They always needed more. I finally learned my lesson about 3 years ago. Eric had gotten himself into a mess with a bad investment, some can't-fail real estate deal that absolutely did fail. And he came to me, hat in hand, asking for $10,000. I told him no. He got mad. Natalie backed him up, saying, "It's just money, Daniel. You make it back." Our parents told me I was being heartless. That was the moment something in me shifted. I realized it didn't matter how much I gave. They'd always seen me as their safety net. So I stopped. I told them both, in no uncertain terms, that I was done. No more loans. No more bailouts. They were on their own. They were furious. Said I was abandoning my family. Called me selfish, greedy, ungrateful. But I stood firm. And for a while, things were quiet. I thought maybe they'd finally figured things out. That maybe, just maybe, they'd learned to live within their means. Then, last year, Eric and Natalie made a big announcement. "We're renovating the house." Natalie beamed at our family dinner. New kitchen, new floors, the works. I almost laughed. "With what money?" Eric waved me off. "We have it handled. Don't worry about it." Which was code for, "We have no idea how we're paying for this, but we'll figure it out later." I already knew how this was going to end, but I didn't say anything. I just smiled and let them dig their own grave. At least that's what I thought. A few months later, I was checking my bank accounts, just my usual routine. Everything looked normal until I noticed something odd. A transfer. A huge transfer. My stomach dropped as I clicked into the details. Over $85,000 gone. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. It wasn't fraud. It wasn't a bank error. It was a transfer from an old joint account I'd completely forgotten about. A joint account I had once set up with my siblings years ago when we were handling some family property paperwork. One I had assumed was empty. One they had used to drain my savings. I felt physically sick. My hand was shaking as I grabbed my phone and called Natalie. She picked up immediately, all sunshine and laughter. "Oh, hey, I was just about to call you," she chirped. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Where's my money?" She went silent for a beat. Then, in the most casual voice imaginable, she said, "Oh, that. Yeah, we had a little emergency with the Reno, so we had to use it. But don't worry, we'll pay you back." I was stunned into silence. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, controlled. "You stole from me." "Oh, that. Yeah, we had a little emergency with the Reno, so we had to use it. But don't worry, we'll pay you back." I was stunned into silence. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, controlled. "You stole from me." Natalie's voice trembled as she repeated herself. "We have nowhere else to go." I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at them. Eric was shifting uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. He looked older, more worn down than I'd ever seen him. The confident arrogance he always carried was gone. Natalie, meanwhile, was doing her usual act. Wide eyes, trembling lip, the same look she used when we were kids to get out of trouble. The suitcases at their feet made the reality sink in. They really had lost everything, and they were expecting me to fix it. A slow, uneasy silence settled between us. I could feel Natalie watching me closely, waiting for my reaction. Eric was the first to break. "Look, man," he sighed, forcing a chuckle like we were old pals. "I know things got messy, but we're family. We need a place to stay for a bit, just until we get back on our feet." I said nothing. Natalie, ever the actress, took a shaky breath. "We wouldn't ask if we had any other choice. We just need time to figure things out. Just a few weeks," Eric added quickly. "Maybe a month tops." I let the words hang in the air before finally speaking. "So, the bank took the house." My voice was calm, even. Eric grimaced. "Yeah, the house you stole my money to renovate." Natalie flinched. "Daniel, the house that was supposed to be an investment," I continued, taking a step forward. "The house that was going to skyrocket in value." Eric's jaw tightened. "It's not like we planned for this to happen." I let out a quiet laugh. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You never plan. You just take. And when things go south, you show up at my door with your hands out." Eric's nostrils flared. "We're not asking for money. Just a place to stay." I crossed my arms. "And why would I do that?" Natalie grabbed my arm, her eyes glistening with forced tears. "Please, Daniel. We're your siblings." I pulled my arm away. "Funny. You didn't seem to remember that when you emptied my savings account." Eric let out a frustrated breath. "Are you really going to hold that over us forever?" I stared at him. "You stole $85,000 from me, Eric. That's not an oops, my bad situation." Natalie sniffled. "We thought we'd be able to pay you back. The house was supposed to, but you didn't." I cut in. "And now, you want me to just let you in? To feed you? Give you a roof over your head?" Eric's patience snapped. "Come on, man. You don't have a wife. You don't have kids. It's just you in this house. You have space. Why are you being so selfish?" There it was. The same argument they always used. I took a slow, deep breath. Then, calmly, I asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" Natalie's gaze darted to the ground. Eric clenched his jaw. I already knew the answer. "They told you no, didn't they?" I said quietly. Silence. I laughed under my breath. "So let me get this straight. Mom and Dad, the same people who defended you, who told me to let it go, wouldn't even take you in?" Eric's hands curled into fists. "They're old, Daniel. They don't have the space. They don't want to deal with your mess," I corrected. Natalie sniffed, blinking back tears. "Please, we have nowhere else to go." I tilted my head. "You had $85,000 of my money. You had a house. You had options. And you threw them all away." Eric's face darkened. "So what? You're just going to leave us out here?" I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. "I haven't decided yet." Natalie's face crumpled. "Daniel," I held up a hand. "I have conditions. You will listen. You will agree. And if you don't, you can find somewhere else." Eric exhaled sharply but nodded. Natalie clutched her suitcase. "Of course. Anything." I stepped back and gestured inside. "Come in." I stepped back, watching as Natalie and Eric hesitated for a moment, their faces painted with desperation. They thought they had me cornered, just like they always did. They believed the same old tricks would work on me. The pity, the forced tears, the empty promises. Eric shifted his weight from foot to foot, trying to look casual, but the stress was evident in the way his eyes flickered around the room, as if searching for signs of weakness. Natalie, on the other hand, was already doing her thing, playing the victim, her lips trembling, eyes wide as though she hadn't just stolen from me a few months ago. They were both masters at manipulating situations to suit their needs, but this time I wasn't buying it. I didn't make a move as they entered the house. I just let them stand there, watching me. The silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken expectations. "So what's the catch?" Eric finally asked, his voice lacking its usual bravado. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a man on the edge, desperate, scared. But I wasn't moved by his tone. "No catch," I said coolly. "But there will be conditions. You won't like them, but that's the price for your mistakes." They both exchanged a quick, uneasy glance, but Eric nodded. "Fine, whatever you want." I leaned back against the kitchen counter, my eyes locked on both of them. "First, you will pay back every penny you owe me. No more excuses. No more we'll get to it later. You will set up a payment plan, and I'll hold you to it." Eric scoffed, clearly about to say something snide, but I cut him off with a look. "And if you don't, I'll take legal action. I'm not playing games anymore." Natalie bit her lip, glancing nervously at her brother before she spoke up. "We will. Of course, we will, Daniel. Just give us some time." "No, time is up," I said. "You didn't give me time when you took from me. It's time for you both to learn accountability." Natalie seemed to shrink under my gaze, but Eric puffed up his chest, trying to hold on to whatever dignity he had left. "We didn't ask for this to happen, you know. The house was supposed to be a solid investment, but things just spiraled. We didn't plan for any of this." I nodded slowly, an almost eerie calm settling over me. "Exactly. You never plan. That's the problem. You think everything will just work out, and when it doesn't, you come running back to me like I'm your safety net." Eric's face flushed, but he was trying hard to maintain control. "We made a mistake. A big one. But you're not perfect either, Daniel." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm aware. But I don't steal from my family. I don't manipulate people into feeling sorry for me just to get what I want." Natalie took a shaky breath, her voice small now. "We're sorry, Daniel. We didn't know where else to turn." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before taking my savings," I shot back. "Before you took what wasn't yours and gambled it away on a stupid renovation you couldn't afford." Eric clenched his jaw, his hands balled into fists. "We've apologized. What more do you want from us?" "I want you to understand," I said, my voice low and deliberate, "that just because I've been there for you in the past doesn't mean I will be again. I'm done cleaning up your messes. I'm done being your fallback." Natalie finally let out a small sob, but it was hard to tell if it was genuine or just part of her routine. "Please, Daniel, we need a place to stay. We have nothing left." I walked toward them, slowly, deliberately. My eyes met Eric's first, then Natalie's. "You had everything. You had your house. You had your money. You had your chances. You blew it. And now, I'm the bad guy because I'm not fixing it for you." Eric looked ready to snap. "This isn't fair. We're your family, Daniel." I leaned in close, my voice hard. "You don't get to use family as a weapon anymore. Not after what you did." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Natalie, for the first time, looked genuinely unsure of herself. Eric, on the other hand, looked like he was about to explode. But I wasn't finished yet. "Condition 2. While you're staying here," I continued, "you will be out of my sight during the day. You'll find a job, any job, and you'll start paying me back immediately. I want to see you both work for what you have. And I won't tolerate any excuses about how hard it is. You've been living in a fantasy world for years. Time to wake up." Eric nodded curtly, but there was no fight left in him. "Fine, we'll get jobs. We'll pay you back. But you're still letting us stay here, right?" I gave him a cold smile. "For now. But one more thing." They both looked at me expectantly, hanging on my every word, as if they were finally realizing they didn't have the power in this situation anymore. "No more lying. No more pretending everything's okay when it's not. I don't want to hear any more sob stories or excuses about why you're broke or why things went wrong. If you want to stay here, you need to be honest with yourselves. You need to stop playing the victim. Natalie wiped her eyes, but there was something calculating in the way she did it. We'll change. We will. Days passed, and the house felt more like a prison than a home with Eric and Natalie under my roof. They stayed in the guest room, barely speaking to me unless they had to. Eric took the occasional walk, his shoulders tense and stiff, probably trying to figure out how to weasel his way out of the mess he'd created. Natalie, ever the manipulator, hovered around the house, pretending to help with chores or accidentally bumping into me in the kitchen with a sad look on her face. It was exhausting, the way they continued to play their games, like they thought they could get away with it all. I had made my peace with the situation, but I knew what had to happen next. The real test wasn't their apologies or their attempts at working for their money. It was about breaking them down enough that they couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I was done being the safety net. They needed to face their consequences. It was around the third week that I started to notice the cracks in their facade. Eric would disappear for hours, only to return with an excuse about meeting some friends. Natalie would find herself glued to her phone. Her screen lit up as she sent text after text. They were scheming, just like they always did. It was clear they hadn't changed. Not really. They were just biding their time, waiting for their opportunity to escape their mess and make someone else clean it up. But this time, it wasn't going to be me. The tipping point came when Eric asked me one night, after a long day of pretending to look for jobs, if he could borrow my car. Just for a few hours, he pleaded, flashing me that half-sincere, half-resentful smile he'd perfected. I'll bring it back, I swear. I didn't even have to think about it. No, I said flatly. You're not borrowing my car. Eric's smile faltered, but his eyes hardened. Come on, man. You can't be serious. You've got your own car. Why are you being like this? I'm being like this because I'm done, I replied, staring him down. I'm done being the guy who fixes everything for you. You made your choices. Now you'll deal with the consequences. His jaw clenched, and he stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think you're some kind of saint, don't you? You've always looked down on us. Like you're so much better because you actually know how to handle your money. You don't have a wife. You don't have kids. You don't understand what it's like to struggle. No, I said evenly. What I don't understand is how you can keep making the same mistakes over and over and still think you deserve help. Before Eric could respond, Natalie emerged from the kitchen, her usual fake smile plastered on her face. You don't have to be so harsh, Daniel, she said sweetly, but there was a venom in her voice that made my blood run cold. We're family. We're just trying to get back on our feet. I looked at her, the mask she'd been wearing for so long finally slipping. The desperation in her eyes was gone, replaced by something far colder, far more calculating. You've been trying to get back on your feet for years, Natalie, I said. But every time things get rough, you take the easy way out. You use people, you lie, and you don't care who you hurt as long as you get what you want. Her face twisted with anger, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the same entitled brat who'd stolen from me as a kid. You have no idea what we've been through, she spat. Maybe if you weren't so self-righteous, you could actually help your family for once instead of holding grudges over everything. Grudges? I laughed bitterly. You took my savings. You didn't just make a mistake, Natalie. You stole from me, and now you're trying to guilt me into feeling sorry for you. Eric stepped in, his tone dripping with resentment. You're unbelievable, Daniel. You're really just going to let us rot? You have the space. You have the means. And you're going to watch us suffer just because you're too stubborn to help. Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole from me. I snapped. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I watched them both, waiting for a response, but they were too proud to back down. They were so used to getting their way that they couldn't fathom the idea of anyone refusing to help them. Not when they were desperate, not when they had nothing left. The next day, I went through their things. A little invasive? Maybe. But I needed to know what kind of people I was dealing with, and I wasn't going to let them pull the wool over my eyes again. The bills, the papers, the receipts, they were all there. And as I rifled through the stack, I found what I was looking for. A credit card statement in Eric's name. Thousands of dollars in new charges, mostly on luxury items. A new car rental, a high-end designer watch, and surprise, surprise, Another vacation they booked, all while they claimed to be struggling. I'd had enough. I walked into the living room, holding the statement in my hand. Eric, I said quietly, you're still stealing, aren't you? He stiffened, his face going pale as he glanced at Natalie for support. She looked away, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. You've been living beyond your means this whole time, I continued. And now you expect me to feel bad for you? No, you don't get to lie to me anymore. You don't get to make excuses. You've burned every bridge, and I'm not going to be the one you come running to when your lies catch up with you. Eric tried to shrug it off, but I could see the panic behind his eyes. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, Daniel. We didn't know what else to do. Well, here's the thing, I said, cutting him off. I'm done. I'm done letting you leech off me. And I'm done watching you destroy everything. I'm not your fallback anymore, and I'm certainly not your savior. Natalie tried one last time, her voice shaking as she took a step toward me. Please, Daniel, you don't understand. We're sorry. Just let us stay a little longer. Please, but I didn't want to hear it. I wasn't about to let them drag me down with them. They had made their choices, and now they would deal with the consequences. I watched them gather their things, their faces twisted with frustration and resentment. They'd lost the house, their money, their dignity, and now they were about to lose me too. And the funny thing? I wasn't sad, not in the slightest. Eric and Natalie had spent their whole lives using others. But today, I finally put a stop to it. And that, I realized, was the best revenge I could ever get. I let them walk out the door, suitcase in hand, their pleas fading into the silence. It's been a few months since Eric and Natalie left. They didn't come back, and they didn't call. Honestly, I'm fine with that. My life is peaceful now, and the weight of their constant demands and manipulations is gone. I've been able to focus on my work, my investments, and for the first time in a long time, I'm not worried about cleaning up their messes. As for Eric and Natalie, they've bounced between friends and whatever cheap rentals they could find. I've heard through the grapevine that they're still struggling, still fighting their bad decisions. I don't know if they've learned anything. Part of me wonders if they ever will. But here's the thing, I still feel a little guilty. A small part of me wonders if I could have been more compassionate, maybe given them a little more grace, even after everything they did. I could have let them stay a little longer, let them try to get back on their feet in a less dramatic way. But then again, I also wonder, was I right to draw the line? To say enough was enough? So, I'm asking, am I the a-hole here? Did I do the right thing? Or was I too harsh? What do you think? If you think Daniel made the right call by standing his ground, or if you think he went too far, drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one.